Coming up on Bridge City News, officials in Lebanon are still investigating how more than 2,700 tons of ammonium nitrate came to be stored at a port, exploding and killing more than 100 people in Beirut. The province makes another big announcement to support irrigation efforts in southwestern Alberta, and the federal government announces a deal with 2 pharmaceutical companies to develop a vaccine to COVID-19.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Hal Roberts.
Thanks so much for joining us. The Lebanese government has declared a 2-week state of emergency following the aftermath of a massive explosion which left at least 100 people dead and more than 4,000 injured in Beirut. Investigators are searching the wreckage of Beirut's port for clues to the cause of the explosion that flattened the port area. The government has put an unspecified number of port officials under house arrest, pending an investigation into how over 2,700 tons of ammonium nitrate came to be stored at the port. An official letter surfaced online showing the head of the Customs Department warning about the danger of having ammonium nitrate in the port and asked to have it removed. Experts believe the blast was ignited by a fire that engulfed what appeared to be fireworks that were also stored at the port. The Lebanese community in Alberta has banded together after the violent explosion that rocked Beirut yesterday. Alex Hallett is the president of the Calgary Lebanese Association, and he says he has family in Lebanon that were only 60 kilometers away from the blast. Hallett is saying that if you want to donate to help Beirut, you should do so by starting a donation fundraiser yourself. He also says aid can get to needy families in Lebanon right away by donating to the Lebanese Red Cross or the Lebanese Food Bank.
However, speaking to one of my cousins, he thought the house was going to come over. That was the percussions of the explosion caused almost earthquake feelings to most of them over there. You know, we have a lot of folks within our community that are looking at doing tier 2 fundraisers, which is great. We encourage them all to, but a matter of getting the money there immediately is going to be tough. So I know the Red Cross right now, which is an amazing organization in Lebanon right now, is in dire need. Like, they're in dire need. I know they're medical supplies. I know Doctors Without Borders right now is quickly dispatching teams out there, just due to the magnitude of the injuries and the fatalities happening there right now. And then the Lebanese Food Bank. Folks there, it's been a tough year for 98% of the country. But right now especially, they're going to need the donations to roll in.
Hallett says he's thankful for the support the Lebanese community has received during this time. There will be a vigil taking place at Calgary City Hall tonight, 7 o'clock, for the victims of the explosion. No reaction yet from Prime Minister Justin Trudeau on the Beirut explosion, but U.S. President Donald Trump offered his condolences and says the U.S. will offer assistance to the people of Lebanon as they deal with this tragedy.
Our prayers go out to all the victims and their families. The United States stands ready to assist Lebanon. We have a very good relationship with the people of Lebanon, and we will be there to help. It looks like a terrible attack.
Infrastructure Minister Catherine McKenna says her government is freeing up an additional $3.3 billion to help with infrastructure projects. The money will help support schools and long-term care facilities impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic.
It's going to make it easier to invest in practical measures to make schools safer for children, to make long-term care facilities safer for aging people and those that work there. Also, to help enable new ways to get outside, to get to nature, to get exercise without putting Canadians at risk.
Ottawa's announced that it is signing deals with both Pfizer and Moderna to buy millions of doses of the COVID-19 vaccines that are now in phase 3 of clinical trials. Procurement Minister Anita Anand says Canada will get access to the vaccines if they prove to be safe and effective. Canada's Chief Public Health Officer, Dr. Theresa Tam, warned the vaccine would not necessarily be the silver bullet that would provide a quick end to the pandemic. Now, the province came out with its COVID-19 numbers today. Alberta has an increase of 94 cases of the coronavirus and 203 deaths to date so far. Province-wide, there are 1,146 active cases, including 98 here in the South Zone. So far, close to 9,900 people have recovered from the virus. Health officials say just over 727,000 tests have been performed in the province. Nationwide, there is still around 15,000 active cases of COVID-19. More than 100,000 Canadians have recovered from the virus. Closer to home, some farmers in Lethbridge County will have access to a bigger and better irrigation system thanks to a $1.1 million grant by the province. As Jeanette Rocher reports now, it will help farmers use less water to grow more crops.
We're on an irrigation tour as the Department of Agriculture and Forestry, trying to hear directly from irrigation districts and from irrigators, farmers that use irrigation, of how better we can make irrigation happen in the province of Alberta.
It's part of Alberta's Economic Recovery Plan, a $1.1 million announcement by the UCP government today going to Lethbridge Northern Irrigation District.
It does take money and expertise to ensure that existing irrigation infrastructure that we do have is well maintained and functions efficiently.
The $1.1 million will go towards a $17 million project to lay an underground water pipe that farmers can access to irrigate their crops more efficiently.
We are a semi-arid portion of our province, and we can't just rely on the moisture that Mother Nature would provide for us. What she does provide can be quickly whipped away with the Chinooks and the winds and the hot, dry summers that we have. So irrigation becomes even more vital.
Starting 2 kilometers north of Picture Butte, the pipeline will run straight east to Iron Springs through 7,000 acres and 430 kilometers.
We pick up all the farmers as we go. So it's all pipeline. Every farmer is going to have, not everybody, not the first couple, are going to have 45 pounds of pressure. So there's no pumping anymore, so it's complete energy saving.
The project will take 2 years to complete and will be constructed in 2 phases beginning this fall.
It'll cut down on water seepage, on evaporation throughout their canal network, and will make farmers more efficient. So the farmers will ultimately use less water to irrigate more land here in southern Alberta and ultimately grow more food. And with that increase in irrigated land, you're going to have, again, more food companies and value-added companies coming here into southern Alberta.
For Bridge City News, I'm Jeanette Rocher.
It will soon become easier for pedestrians and cyclists to go from Coaldale to Lethbridge. As Ainsley O'Reilly explains, the link pathway is set to be created as a safer alternative to walking along the highway in Lethbridge County.
About 5 years ago, a group of cyclists had an idea, a 45-minute bike path that runs from Coaldale to Lethbridge, with a little something for everyone.
Being able to ride with my grandkids from Lethbridge to Coaldale on a pathway that follows through the irrigation canal through Lethbridge County and tells the story of agriculture.
The project's main benefit is safety. Cyclists and pedestrians can avoid the busy highway and take on a scenic route that not only keeps you active, but also educates.
Hopefully there'll be some interpretive stops along the way, that, some signs where they can say, oh, okay, this is a pivot gun, and irrigation has brought so much value to this area, or this is a canola field, or this is whatever, and people can maybe interact with the actual nature and agricultural elements in the rural setting and have a really good experience in exercising their mind and their body.
Interpretive storyboards, we want to tell the story of agriculture, we want to tell the story of the research station in this region, so it's educational component as well. So we think that's a big plus.
Phase 1 is expected to finish in the fall, and if you'd like to donate, you can visit linkpathway.org. For Bridge City News, I'm Ainsley O'Reilly.
The province announced that it is providing an extra $48 million to continue offering support for those struggling with homelessness during the COVID-19 pandemic. Officials say the funds will help shelter operators continue to provide a safe stay for vulnerable Albertans. The funding ensures expanded shelter services in many regions of the province, including here in Lethbridge, Calgary, Edmonton, and Red Deer. The funds are in addition to the $25 million announced in March of this year. The staff of the Lethbridge Food Bank were shocked to discover that multiple windows were vandalized over the long weekend. The executive director for the food bank says this type of vandalism happens more often than not.
Over the long weekend, we were closed for civic holiday on Monday, and we experienced some vandalism to the windows in the front of the food bank, which was a surprise, and it was attended to. It was during the day, so our board members actually came and attended to the situation.
A passerby called the police, and the police came and caught the individual, and he was charged, and so here we are repairing the damage and ordering new glass to fill where the wood is. Losing the windows could cost us up to $4,000 or $5,000. And so the community has been very generous. They've come forward, and we're very thankful. And we will just carry on serving people in need.
First responders are speaking out against the consolidation of EMS dispatch services. Alberta Health Services announced that 911 calls handled by 4 municipality-run dispatch sites in Lethbridge, Calgary, Red Deer and Wood Buffalo will be transitioned to one of its 3 provincial dispatch centres. The union representing the Alberta firefighters says it is short-sighted. Lethbridge Mayor Chris Spearman says municipalities were blindsided, and he expressed his extreme disagreement with the move.
We keep getting these flimsy reports and flimsy recommendations that everything should be consolidated to one center in Edmonton, where people are not familiar with the geographical areas, are not familiar with the communities, will not provide data on the effectiveness of their services, and will not share that and will not be accountable. They don't deserve to run a consolidated service, and while we're running an effective one, that should be respected.
If you're making your way to a City of Lethbridge facility, you'll have to do so with a face mask or a face shield. Starting Friday, city facilities like the Galt Museum, Fort Whoop-Up, the airport, and the library will be implementing mandatory face masks for customers coming inside. Jessica Deacon-Rogers is the program coordinator for the Helen Schuler Nature Center, and she says they will not be providing face masks for customers. They are encouraging nature lovers to bring their own.
So this Friday, if people are coming to visit inside our building, we will be asking people to wear some sort of facial covering. So it can be a mask, it could be a face shield as well. We'll have people put masks on before they come into the building and then wear them during their visit throughout the facility, and then they can remove them when they go back outside if they choose to do so. So we will be asking people to bring their own masks. I think it's becoming much more common to have a mask just because they are becoming more commonly worn in lots of different places. And so yes, if people are able to provide their own masks, that is preferred.
Lethbridge City Council has asked the city manager, Craig Dalton, to draft a bylaw that would make mask wearing mandatory in all public places in Lethbridge. The bylaw will be shown to council for consideration on Monday, August the 10th. The University of Lethbridge announced today that the Max Bell Aquatic Centre will be reopening on Monday, but with limitations. Officials say advanced bookings are required, so necessary cleaning can take place between users. In addition, change rooms will be available for those using the Centre for Sport and Wellness. Entrance to the facility will be available through the south doors, and parking lot in Lot G will be free until the end of the month. Residents of Myrtle Beach started cleaning up after a tropical storm left a trail of destruction. Isaias, which was downgraded from a hurricane, made landfall Monday.
Water was crazy, the wind was up, the waves were coming over the pier out there, and people were walking. We were scared for them. Next thing you know, the water kept getting higher and higher, and it overtook the pier, and I'm shocked it's still standing.
We keep thinking we've learned our lesson, and each time there's a hurricane, we learn a new lesson. So the new lesson, is you never trust the fact that you're only going to have a 2-foot storm surge. We had water up to that step. Wow. So, it was probably around 11 o'clock that immediately, it was like the wind shifted and a foot drop of water. And I do think that was an issue, and I think we got caught up in that it was downplayed, and I think another lesson learned.
Many in Cambodia are living in a situation of poverty in urban and rural slums. Their prospects are bleak, and the family unit is constantly under threat. OM Mercy Teams International is providing education and social work programs to support the poor and disadvantaged children.
Cambodia, a 95% Buddhist country, is also one of the poorest nations in Asia. Out of 15 million people, a fifth survive on less than $1.20 a day. This poverty breeds all kinds of social injustice.
Environment I grow up in, violence, trafficking, and my family sometimes don't have food to eat, so I need to work hard, collect the rabbit. I cannot go to school the same other children. Many times I plan to kill myself too before.
Mercy Teams International, part of OM's Mekong Initiative, serves among the poorest people in Cambodia, seeking to provide practical aid and education while sharing the love of Jesus in places where there is no gospel influence.
So we go to the places where there are no churches at all, where people never have heard of Jesus. We work in 4 areas where there are slums, and we help the people there as they have problems with violence, alcohol, drugs, stealing, and we share the gospel with them.
MTI always come and follow up and visit every day almost.
MTI supports children in these communities who are especially vulnerable and lack access to basic education.
I want to see the kids over here, they can get the better education and have school to study.
We support them, the school material, school uniform, school books, everything that they need to study.
The children all know the gospel, they know all the Bible stories and they tell them at home. And the parents hear them and they are happy.
Before I don't know God too, but after I know the MTI, I believe God.
It's a blessing that we see that people who are first themselves in our program, that they now are able to reach out to their own people.
When I was young, I come here and listen to MTI staff to share the gospel as well.
And so now, by faith, I pray to God, and now I see my community develop a lot.
Every day, individuals impacted by social injustices experience God's love. Their lives are being changed by Jesus, but thousands more remain out of reach.
Great to see the difference Christian organizations are making around the world. Environment Canada issued another heat warning for our region today, but how long will it last? A complete look at the weather picture is coming up. We had yet another heat warning in Lethbridge and southwestern Alberta today as we hovered around the 30-degree mark once again. Jeanette Rocher is here now with a full look at the weather forecast. Jeanette, some relief in the form of rain may be on the way by Friday.
Yeah, Hal, we could actually see a 60% chance of showers coming up this Friday. But until then, we are still under that heat warning for Lethbridge, Milk River, Tabor, and surrounding areas in southern Alberta. Now, looking at tonight, 15 degrees is our overnight low with a light wind. Into tomorrow, lots of sunshine as well. 31 degrees, going to feel hotter with that humidex. And we're going to have a very high UV index as well. Overnight low tomorrow evening, 13 degrees. And as we look further into the 5-day forecast, like I said, we could see a chance of showers on Friday, 60% chance to be exact. 21 degrees is the high for that day, 25 the high for Saturday. Should be a lovely weekend there. Lots of sunshine for both Saturday and Sunday. 26 is the high for Sunday. 27 our high for both Monday and Tuesday with a mix of sun and cloud. Now, according to the almanac, the high temperature for this time of year on average is 26 degrees. So we're certainly going to be hitting that this weekend. Up until now, we've had quite a little bit of a heat warning there in effect. 11 degrees is the average low. 38 degrees was our high temperature back in 1961. 4 degrees was our low. That was in 2006. The sun rose this morning at 6:08 a.m. and our evening sunset tonight, 9:07 a.m. rather, that 9:07 p.m. Let me be clear here, 9:07 p.m. There we go. Let's take a look at what's happening across the nation. Over on the West Coast, we're going to be seeing lots of there's actually periods of rain tomorrow. 20 degrees is the high for both Victoria and Vancouver tomorrow. Edmonton, Calgary still under that high heat warning, including the corridor in between there. Sunshine expected tomorrow in Edmonton, and Calgary could see a chance of some showers, 30% chance actually. Sunshine across the rest of the prairies tomorrow. 32 is the high for Saskatoon and 30 for Regina. A lovely 30-degree day also expected tomorrow in Winnipeg with sunny skies. And as we look further into central Canada, beautiful days here as well for Toronto, Ottawa, and Montreal. 25 degrees and sunshine for both Toronto and Montreal. Ottawa could see as high as 26 degrees tomorrow. And then as we look into Atlantic Canada, we're seeing some high heat warnings in effect as well. For Fredericton, 27 is the high, lots of sunshine. Chance of showers over there in Charlottetown and Halifax. 26 the high for Charlottetown, 28 for Halifax, and 25 is our high expected tomorrow in St. John's, Newfoundland with a mix of sun and cloud. There you go. That is your forecast.
For the first time in history, gold has hit $2,000 an ounce. Investors are flocking to the precious metal as uncertainty continues in global markets because of the COVID-19 pandemic. Bullion is up 35% so far this year. Gold could extend gains as governments and central banks respond to slowing growth with vast amounts of stimulus. Goldman Sachs is forecasting that gold could rally to $2,300 US an ounce. Shifts in the U.S. bond market have helped boost gold. Real yields on 10-year treasuries have collapsed below zero. Husky Energy has announced a carbon emissions intensity reduction target of 25% per barrel by the year 2025. The oil sands producer makes the short-term commitment in its 2020 Environmental, Social and Governance report. It says it's an early step as it works on achieving zero emissions by the year 2050. Suncor and Cenovus have each set targets to reach a 30% reduction in carbon intensity per barrel by the year 2030. Cenovus, meanwhile, endorsed the net zero by 2050. Canadian auto sales increased 6.2% last month over June's numbers as the sector recovers from the COVID-19 pandemic. Analysts say even with sales down 4.9% compared to the same month last year, they still make up the 7th best July in Canadian automotive history. Experts say after a brutal collapse in April, sales reached 147 and 37% in each of the following months and continued to gain in July. Many banks offered a mortgage deferral to help homeowners during the coronavirus pandemic. A Lethbridge realtor says the time is coming to play catch-up, and that may cause some financial hardships for families.
We're seeing a lot of the deferrals catching up to us now, through this month, arguably through about September. And the fear that a lot of people have is that they're going to be required to catch up on those payments. The interest and those accruals will be added to the debt that they have now. And some folks are worried that they won't be able to do that. Of course, there's been a lot of unemployment over the last few months, and families' financial situations have changed. So we're asking our clients to engage with us at this stage well in advance of those types of deadlines to see if they have any fears around that to help them mitigate risk should those things be their reality.
We are seeing that some lenders will be open-minded to either re-amortize the mortgage. So if you have 10 years already into your mortgage, we can look at taking those deferred payments and interest accrued and re-amortizing out to the full 25-year period, therefore reducing your monthly mortgage payment. You can look at refinancing as well, which ultimately does the same thing. The concern is, you will have to re-qualify. So as long as you do have employment, stable employment, and your credit hasn't been impacted, then that could be a potential option for you as well.
Now, here's a look at today's markets. The TSX was up 133 points on the day to finish at 16,501. The Dow was up 373 points to 27,201. The S&P 500 was up 21 points to 3327, and the Nasdaq was up 57 to 10,998. Oil was up 50 cents to $42.20 per barrel. Natural gas was down a cent to $2.21. Gold was up a cent to $2,038.13 an ounce. Silver was down a cent to $26.95 an ounce. Wheat is at $220 per metric ton. Barley's at $225. Canola's at $4.89, and corn is at $224 per metric ton. Live cattle were down 3 cents to $107.45. Feeder cattle were down 15 cents to $146.48, and lean hogs were down 25 cents to $49.45. The Canadian dollar was down slightly on the day to 75.37 US. Recapping one of our top stories this hour, the Lebanese government has declared a 2-week state of emergency following the aftermath of a massive explosion which left at least 100 people dead and more than 4,000 injured at a port in Beirut. The Lebanese government has put a number of port officials under house arrest and are investigating why over 2,700 tons of ammonium nitrate came to be stored at a port. At the end of this month, we'll know who the new leader of the Conservative Party of Canada will be. Now, a couple of candidates said they would never reopen the abortion debate. Ruth Shaw is the executive director of the National Campus Life Network, and she says the abortion debate should never have been closed. She'll explain why in just a moment. Abortion is a topic that stirs up passion on both sides of the debate. It seems, however, that the pro-life side of the conversation is not being welcomed in the public square. Joining me now in studio today is Ruth Shaw. She's the Executive Director of National Campus Life Network in Ottawa, and we're going to discuss this very hot-button topic of abortion. Ruth, welcome to BCN.
Thank you for having me.
So tell me about your organization, NCLN. What is it all about?
Yeah, so we're a youth organization, an anti-abortion organization that works to persuade young people to reject abortion. So young people in Canada are the ones having the most abortions, and so we believe if we want to see an end to that, we need to address the demographic having them. And so the way that we do that is by localizing onto university campuses, where we mentor, train, and mobilize campus pro-life clubs to bring the anti-abortion message to campus.
Now, you believe that Canada, Ruth, will one day be abortion-free? How is that possible in a country like ours?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's going to happen in a short amount of time. But if you look at other movements, especially on the left and in any other sphere, where you're able to catalyze people and speak to people and get them to adopt certain life-affirming values through repeated messaging, or through just constantly bringing the debate and exposing how bad something is, I do believe that at some point in our lifetime, we will see massive amounts of people reject abortion as more and more comes to light as to exactly how bad abortion actually is.
And you believe that young people are truly the catalysts for changing society and our mindset here in Canada? How so?
Well, I mean, to be clear, that can go either way, right? So, in our country right now, the vast majority of young people accept abortion as perfectly permissible. So if you ask the average person, as we do on university campuses, you ask them, what do you think about abortion? And they will say, oh, I'm pro-choice, just totally automatically. It's an automatic response. We've met so many young women who, when they find out they're pregnant, they automatically say, well, I'm going to have an abortion. So you can be a catalyst for change in that way too, by promoting abortion and accepting it and promoting it to your peer group. However, if you're able to convince young people to, and show them the logic and the science that proves that abortion is abhorrent, I think that young people have proven to be the demographic for years and years and years that when they're catalyzed and convicted and mobilized, they will affect great change in our country. And so we're aimed at systematically speaking to young people on a university campus and mobilizing them and giving them opportunities to speak up, just as the pro-choice movement has done with young people, which is one of the reasons that we've seen abortion last for so long in our country.
Ruth, why do you think it is that so many universities are pro-choice and they don't even want the discussion? They're not willing to welcome pro-life voices onto campus? Why do you think that is?
Yeah, so, there's obviously probably money involved somewhere, but we're also dealing with a narrative and a history in our country of abortion being on demand for a very long time. So this is now the third generation that we're seeing who just accepts abortion as totally acceptable. So, you have young people graduating and then coming into positions of leadership. And if no one is affecting that generation in some kind of massive way, then all you're going to see is the continual perpetuation of the abortion rhetoric across our country. I mean, you see that greatly with Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. He graduated from a university campus, McGill. He did social justice work. He was an advocate for various things, and now he's in a position of leadership promoting certain things that are, destroying the fabric of our country, namely free speech.
Now, you had an interesting experience at Carleton University. Why don't you share with our viewers what happened?
Yeah, so, quite a long time ago, 10 years ago, I was running the pro-life club on my own campus, Carleton University. And, we were aimed at bringing the dialogue to campus no matter what. And so we wanted to put on a display that showed people exactly what abortion was. And the student union and our administration really didn't like us. We were sort of infamous on campus because we wouldn't let up in our messaging. And we applied to use this space on campus to put up the display, and the administration had a big problem with that, and so they denied us the ability to use space that everyone else on campus is allowed to use. And so we said to the university, this is discrimination. It's content-based discrimination. We're tuition-paying students, so we have a right to this property, and it's not for universities to decide who gets to talk about what. Universities are meant to be a place where we can explore ideas. And if we want to see Canada remain a democracy, then we have to vehemently and protect our free speech. So they didn't like that very much, and so we said, we're going to do this in protest of the university. So we showed up with our display very peacefully, and they had called the Ottawa City Police to have us arrested, and they handcuffed us and put us in paddy wagons, and then took us to a security building on campus, and then uncuffed us, charged us with trespassing on our own campus, and then told us to go to class.
Oh my goodness.
And so we subsequently filed a lawsuit against the school for their discrimination, but unfortunately we lost because laws, courtrooms are not immune to politics, I would say.
Speaking of politics, how do you feel when leaders say the abortion debate is no longer open? Even the Conservative Party of Canada, the last election, say we're not going to reopen this debate.
Yeah. I think it's incredibly disappointing to see how far removed our politicians are from real life. In our country, a majority of Canadians want to see a restriction on abortion in late term, in the third trimester, and that was recent polling that was released through Angus. And I think you are buying into a narrative that makes them afraid to have a conversation about abortion. But our philosophy is, as is many other organizations in the movement, people are having abortions, and they're having them to the tune of $100,000 a year. So you're talking about a very serious medical procedure that we've politicized to the point where we can't even talk about it. And that's a problem. That's a health risk to women and children, obviously. There are women who are being trafficked who have abortions. There are women who are in abusive relationships who are being pressured, and we can't effectively help any of them because there's this sort of blanket over the whole thing. So long story short, they're wrong, and the more that they try to say the abortion debate is closed, the more that we'll talk about it.
Ruth, what about the, let's say husband and wife, let's say the wife was raped, and the husband and wife say, we don't want to have this rapist's child growing inside of my wife. That's why we're having an abortion. What do you say to a couple like that? And they both agree that they don't want to have this child, they don't want to bring this child to term.
So first and foremost, it's critical that anyone who is aiding someone in this situation is able to speak compassionately to the people who are involved, because there are 3 people involved in this situation: the baby, the mom, and the dad. And in fact, they are now parents, whether they planned to be or not. And even if there was someone else involved, this person's wife, right, she was involved. She's now a mom. And as much as that child is partially the result of a rapist, a very horrible person who's done a horrible thing, they're also partially this woman's got her DNA, and that should make them valuable to whoever is involved in the situation, even if they came from a difficult circumstance.
So it's not the baby's fault, right?
It's not the baby's fault.
So maybe just give the baby up for adoption. Maybe bring the baby to term.
Ultimately, abortion is not an eraser, and abortion cannot unrape a rape victim. And so what we say to women is that you're looking at perhaps adding trauma in an already very traumatic situation. There have been many women who've had abortions who say it felt like being raped again because the procedure is very intrusive. And not to say that it won't be extremely difficult, but if we had a woman who had been raped and she decided to keep her child, and then a year later this child starts to look like the rapist, we would not set up a clinic to allow her to go and end the life of that child because that child has the DNA of this rapist as well and looks like this rapist.
What do you say to women, though, Ruth, that say, this is my body, you have no right to tell me what to do with my own body?
Yeah, so what we often say is we ask a lot of questions. So we would predominantly ask first, is there one body or 2 bodies? When you're pregnant, how many bodies are there? And if you're pregnant, do you have 4 arms and 4 legs? Obviously not. You're not, a hermaphrodite. You're carrying someone else's body. And in our species, this is how people procreate. So it's not just your body. And so from a human rights perspective, you need to weigh the rights of both individuals, just like you would in any other situation between 2 born people. My rights end as soon as I'm going to harm you, and both are considered equal. So similarly, we need to look at the child's rights and the rights of the mom as equal. And in that way, abortion is nothing more than age discrimination, because they're younger more vulnerable human beings, and for that reason, their rights are discounted.
How did we reach this point, Ruth, that Canada became a country with no restrictions on abortion? I mean, even liberal nations like France and Sweden have gestational restrictions.
Yeah, it's a good question. So again, from my perspective, it's a historical narrative that's been passed down now generation to generation, and the result of abortion is very hidden from the public. You know, you could go, if you're not in some specific field, you could go years without knowing where the abortion clinic is in your city, or that abortions are even happening, or what is abortion at all. People have this very vague concept about what abortion is. And so for that reason, it's easy to build marketing and a narrative around something that people don't really understand. So, you know, in our work, we try extremely hard to bring the reality and the truth of abortion to young people and really get them to challenge their own preconceived notions when it comes to abortion, because most of it is just absolutely crazy. Like, we have ultrasound machines and a very clear picture and way to determine when human life begins based on science, logic, and imagery, and yet somehow this narrative has remained intact.
Has that ultrasound maybe changed women's perceptions or opinions about getting an abortion once they actually see their child inside of their bodies?
Especially in the States, where there are fewer regulations in being able to have ultrasound technology in crisis pregnancy care centers or outside abortion clinics. Like, I know an organization that has set one up in a bus, and then as women are heading to the clinic, they ask them like, hey, why don't you just get checked first? And then they're able to convince them to have an ultrasound, and it's had an incredible ability to change women's minds. And I know so many stories like that, where once they actually are able to see either what an abortion is or the ultrasound image of their own child and their own offspring, their minds change.
You know what's interesting too, Ruth, is that recent studies have shown that Canadians, though the majority of Canadians are pro-choice, they're actually against gender-selective abortions.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is?
Well, I think it's a bit of a difficulty if you are pro-choice, which is, you know, based on the narrative of women's rights, and yet you promote and support the killing of young women in the womb. You can't have it both ways. Although on university campuses, we have met pro-choice people who justify gender selection under women's rights and choices, and to which we often ask, so women should have the right to kill other women if it's for their own empowerment. You can't have it both ways. So I think pro-choice people who are more reasonable do see that there's a problem with using abortion to kill women. And we're, you know, in China and India, this is certainly proven to be a problem. It's nothing more than dehumanization. And, you know, similarly, there are a lot of pro-choice people who I think would oppose late-term abortion, at least from our experience on campus, and certainly the polling suggests that most reasonable people can see, okay, like if she's in crisis at first, you know, or, you know, having those conversations, but once the baby's viable, all those arguments fall apart. Not that they were very good to begin with, but they become far less understandable.
Sometimes people as well, Ruth, they want to have an abortion when they find out that their child maybe has Down syndrome. You know, there's some real physical challenges with this child. What do you say to that couple?
Well, again, you know, what we've typically said is, would you have the same mentality with a born child who has disabilities? Now, problematically, in our country, some people probably would say, you know, end their life as well. So what we try to do is explain value, and we explain that, you know, there are varying, you know, just variables or characteristics that change through the course of your life. And we need to eliminate suffering and not sufferers. And frankly, people with Down syndrome are some of the happiest people that I have ever met, and they bring so much joy and color to our world. And if the left truly wants to be diverse and, you know, identity politics and really value people based on who they really are, then certainly this hypocrisy around abortion when it comes to disabilities is just absolutely ridiculous and needs to change.
I know a couple in Edmonton, they had to wait 3 years to adopt because there was a shortage of babies.
Wow.
So doesn't that make sense then to have the babies, to bring them to term, eliminate abortion, and then bless these families that want to have children and adopt kids?
Yeah, it's a very
have the opportunity, right?
Yeah, very interesting that many people who support abortion are also against adoption, and they say, well, you're going to have a child out there. How traumatic is that? Well, I mean, abortion is extremely traumatic to go through, yet we don't talk about it as a trauma, which adds another trauma to that situation. But yes, you know, I myself was adopted as a baby from India, and I think that, you know, people would be blessed to adopt, and certainly there are more couples waiting to adopt children than there are children in Canada.
Ruth Shaw, Executive Director of National Campus Life Network out of Ottawa. Thanks for joining us here in studio
Thank
today.
you so much for having me.
Now that cannabis is legal in Canada, more people are using it for health reasons. How effective is it, and what are some of the health risks associated with it? Joining me now to talk about it via Skype from Calgary is Professor Jacqueline Smith, Director of Mental Health and Wellness in the Faculty of Nursing at the University of Calgary. Jacqueline, welcome to BCN.
Thank you. Great to be with you today.
So what are some of the benefits of using cannabis for medical treatment? I know some people use it for pain relief. Are there other potential benefits?
Well, what I do want to say, cannabis has been around for a long time, but because it was an illegal product for so long, there was minimal research. So we are starting to do some research, but it is still in the early phase. What we do know that is cannabis now is being recommended for pain associated with palliative care. So those who are, again, palliative. Also for nausea and vomiting in relation to chemotherapy, for spasticity, for multiple sclerosis. And just recently, in the last couple of years, it's now being used for treatment-resistant epilepsy in children.
Wow. I have members of my family who are seniors who like to use it for their fibromyalgia and their osteoarthritis. Your thoughts?
Well, cannabis is a very complex compound, and there's lots of different cannabinoids associated with that. So I think the research right now is very, very interesting because they're starting to isolate some of those compounds. And I have heard in research that there is an anti-inflammatory property to it. My caution is, again, this is early research. And you have to have a really critical eye when you're looking at research, because some research, they do it with small participants, number of participants. Some research is not being replicated. We're not seeing random control trials as well, too. So I'm concerned there's a little bit of a panacea effect right now, and where cannabis is being recommended for everything under the sun. Now, I want to position myself as someone who sits on the fence. On a personal level, I can tell you that one of our daughters was treated for a cannabis use disorder. And, but also my father, who's passed away from cancer, used cannabis for pain control. So again, I think we have to be very cautious. I am a researcher. We did some research with students at the University of Calgary, and we do know that many young people are using cannabis, and they're saying that it's effective for their anxiety, for their depression, and for their sleep, and for their pain. And we don't deny the fact that people are experiencing positive effects, but what we're saying is that also alongside the positive is the potential for risk, because we don't know the long-term consequences of someone who's using a product over a long period that has not been thoroughly researched.
And I've heard students as well, they like to use cannabis and the cannabis oil when they're vaping and their vaping products. But let's talk more about the larger or more growing demographic, and you say it might be seniors?
Yes, we are seeing a rise in the senior population using cannabis. Again, caution, because when you look at some of the effects, the side effects of cannabis use, it can cause some coordination problems, some dizziness. So we do worry about seniors who are using cannabis and may be at risk for falls, not to insult any of their intelligence, but I think what's really important is that when you are seeing a healthcare practitioner, so we have physicians and nurse practitioners who can prescribe it. So when you're seeing them, you want to be sure that they are thorough in going over the side effects and the potential risks, the potential benefits. And And looking at some of the contraindications as well for people who are wanting to use cannabis. And there are some, if there's a family history of psychoses or just substance use problems, that is a concern. And of course, very, very strong evidence with cannabis use with those who have a predisposition, again, towards psychoses or schizophrenia. That's very thorough research, and we know that people are at high risk of psychosis or schizophrenia as well if they have a family history of either of those.
So what is it in the cannabis itself, doctor, that provides pain relief? Is it the THC, the CBD?
That's a very, very good question, and one that we really emphasize now when we're educating our university students. A lot of people don't understand that cannabis is, the two main components are THC and CBD. Now, THC is a psychoactive, mind-altering substance, whereas CBD is non-intoxicating. So most of the research, I actually read a systematic review today in preparation for this interview, and it's 2020 January. And what they're saying is that most of the research now is favoring CBD as a potential substance that can help with things like we're talking about with pain. There's some early research around anxiety as well, social anxiety. I did see research connected to PTSD and to sleep disorders that are associated with PTSD. So again, I'll caution, all of those studies that I just shared with you are early. So again, we have to be very careful when we're looking at the research. The ones that we talked about at the beginning for palliative pain, for spasticity, for the nausea and vomiting, and for the treatment-resistant epilepsy, solid research. But the others that we're talking about now, we have to be careful with.
When I talk to chefs about cooking, a lot of times they say, Hal, the best way to release the lycopenes in the tomatoes is when you cook them instead of eating them raw. And I thought that was interesting. Is it very similar when it comes to cannabis, that people actually smoke the cannabis as opposed to edibles to get the most bang for their buck, so to speak?
Well, that again, you're just bringing up some really great questions. So there's a difference between smoked and edible. One is the effect. So when you smoke or vape, typically you're starting to see an effect within 10 minutes that peaks at 30 minutes. With edibles, sometimes it takes up to 30 minutes to feel the high if you're using the THC, and then that sometimes takes up to 4 hours to peak. So the problem is those who are accustomed to getting that quick high from the smoked cannabis and are then trying the edible, they're, let's say as an example, they'll eat a brownie and within 10 minutes, they're waiting for that high that they normally get from something that was smoked, and they'll eat another one and another one. So that is a concern. In fact, we are seeing data out of Colorado where there's increased visits to emergency now because of intoxicating effects. So basically overdosing on cannabis, and you would see things like psychoses, increased heart rate, paranoia, definitely concerning symptoms. And again, the concern with the edibles is that now we're dealing with children, with pets, and the caution is if we're making an informed decision as adults to use it, we have to be very, very careful with our children who may be curious, or with our pets who just may eat something that fell on the floor. So
yeah, I'm wondering how dangerous that would be for, like you said, your pet or your child, a baby, a toddler, to get a hold of some of the edibles. How toxic that may actually be, how dangerous.
Well, and again, a good point. It can absolutely be dangerous. When we're talking about THC, we're talking about a psychoactive, mind-altering substance. And for pets as well, we're seeing more research where vets are seeing animals coming in with intoxication as well from cannabis products. So I think what's really important to bring out as well is that there's different concentrations of THC in different products. So they can have a level of up to 99% THC, whereas you can get as low as 4 and 5%. On average, we're looking between 30 and 40 concentration levels of THC. So it's, again, I hope what's coming across here is that you have to be a very informed consumer. You have to be very, very careful about the research. I can tell you that there's a lot of profiteering going on, and that panacea effect, there's people making a lot of money on products, topical as an example, creams for your skin, for there's no strong evidence to suggest that these products are actually effective, but people are paying a lot of money for these products. Is there potential for research to prove that they're helpful? Absolutely. But my line is that I think we're flying a plane as we're building it. So we have to be very careful, and you have to know that you can trust your healthcare practitioner. Again, that they're doing all the screening questions, they're giving you the risks and the benefits. There's no really standardized dosaging right now as well too. So what they're saying is you want to start low and you want to go slow. And for those who maybe are used to smoking cannabis and are switching over to the edibles, they have to realize they are not going to get the effect as immediate as they would with the inhaled. So there's so many different variables to consider, again, if you're making the decision to use.
One of the stories we had on Bridge City News last week was down in the United States, how people are using CBD oil on their pets, like their dogs, saying how it's helping with their pain and their suffering. What are your thoughts on that, using it on our pets?
I think, again, in all areas of cannabis research, it's new. I do research with humans, so I just know that that's another area that we have to be very cautious with. And again, I think there's a potential for profiteering from promoting a substance that's effective when in fact it hasn't been thoroughly researched.
Some say cannabis is not addictive at all, but others say it really can be. What does the science say?
The science says there's absolutely a diagnosis for a cannabis use disorder, and it's found in the diagnostic manual of mental health disorders, and absolutely. And people, I've actually seen the comparison between coming off of cannabis as coming off cigarettes. So there is that withdrawal as well. There's definitely the tolerance as well, where people are starting with smaller concentrations and having to go higher with THC as well, toxic levels to get the benefits. So all the same symptoms of other substance use disorders. And I can definitely tell you, I'm also a clinician who has worked in the area of addiction and mental health, and I've absolutely seen cannabis use disorder amongst youth. And youth is an area that we need to be very, very cautious with, because we know that the brain continues to develop up to the age of 25, even 26. So while the brain is still developing, our youth are at a greater risk of problematic use because of their developing brain. And the research says that the earlier you start and the more frequent you use, the more risk you are of creating of cannabis use disorder or problematic cannabis use. So I think a lot of research, especially from the Canadian Centre of Substance Abuse, they're putting out a lot of literature around caution with young people. And again, we know they're using, in fact, Canadian youth are among the top youth in the world who are smoking cannabis. So we're paying particular attention right now to that.
Are there any potential problems if you consume cannabis edibles along with alcohol or maybe some medications?
Absolutely. We are definitely seeing, if you're consuming alcohol and cannabis, you can potentiate the effect of those two. We do know that we've done a lot of work around impaired driving with alcohol. We're also now having to move forward and look at impairment from cannabis use. And I think we're having to re-educate our young people, because what we do know is the fact that the government has, Health Canada has legalized cannabis. We know now that the perceived risk for young people is going down, and we're seeing a reciprocal effect with that too. So as the perceived risk goes down, use is going up. So the message to a lot of young people is, well, it's legalized, it can't be that bad. So we're really having to do the education again around the CBD, the THC, around the developing brain as well too. And what I do know that our young people are smart and they want to know what the science is saying. So I think we need to teach our young people to make informed decisions. And I think, again, there's a lot of really good research. Canada's lower risk cannabis use guidelines. It's a harm reduction approach. But again, it's giving all the information. It's saying, if you choose to use, these are the things that you should be aware of. So again, giving people the respect and dignity to make the decision and to make it in an informed way as well.
And another thing, when we were talking about some of the long-term detriments or the effects of using cannabis, when you go to the Canada-US border and you want to enter the United States, they ask, have you ever had cannabis? Have you ever smoked pot? If you say yes, good luck getting into the United States right now. That's another danger.
It's true. It's true. I mean, Canada has legalized it federally, and you're seeing across many states in the U.S. they have legalized it in some states, but they have not across the country. So they're protecting their people. I appreciate that.
Professor Jacqueline Smith, Director of Mental Health and Wellness in the Faculty of Nursing at the University of Calgary. Thanks for your time today.
You bet. Thank you for having me.
On behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News, I'm Hal Roberts. God bless, and thanks so much for watching.